Hello everyone, welcome to Across the Nanoverse. My name is Jill and I'm a scientist, and today I'm going to be watching and reacting to one of my favorite movies, which is Galaxy Quest. Now if you haven't seen this before, you're going to want to stop and go watch it. In fact, I think right now it's available for free with ads on YouTube. The reason I wanted to show myself reacting to this is just because I think throughout sci-fi there's so many amazing scientific themes we can pull from it, and I want to rewatch Galaxy Quest and really dive into what the scenes make me think about science and technology. I find it so much fun to look at different sci-fi and really vet whether is that real science or is that fake, what is believable, what's not, what's technology that we maybe will see in the future. It's really a great way to learn a little bit while having fun. I would love to hear what you think about these scenes in the comment section below. Well, let's get started.
You see, we work together.
So the first scene is when this group is beaming to the ship.
The commander had me continue transmission in case you changed your mind. Protector, requesting 4 interstellar...
Me too.
5 pods for immediate
5
departure.
pods. Oh, the light shows under their feet. I wonder what that could be about.
I look forward to meeting you all in person when you arrive at the ship. End transmission.
End transmission.
Oh my god.
Anybody got any change?
Okay, Tony Shalhoub is hilarious, and I've actually met him in person, and he's basically the same person in person as he is in all his shows. Whoa! They just did you see that? They beamed and then they're in this gel looking thing. Let's take a close look at that. So look at that gel that's covering their bodies, right? It's shiny and reflective, and it seems to be coating them pretty well. But it also seems like, especially from earlier, they showed Tim Allen's character flying with the gel thing that's all around him through space. And so they just transported through space from Earth to this spaceship encapsulated in this gel liquid stuff, and it's reflecting off. So I'm a material scientist, so it looks kind of like some kind of polymer material. It looks like a gel, so like something between a liquid and a solid. And they have the sound effects of it sounding like some kind of liquid. But I feel like, honestly, on closer look, they're completely dry when it comes off of them, right? And this material, it must somehow show up around them, so it's not like something's poured on them, right? I don't think this is actually a liquid or a material at all. I think what it may be more like is a force field that perhaps distorts the light. So some of the light that hits this force field is being reflected off of it, and then some of the light is being transmitted through. And it seems like, since you can see all the colors of their skin and the spacesuit and their hair, their facial features, that since it transmits all this light, it's not absorbing any kind of wavelengths of light. Only maybe a little bit of reflection, as you can see, which makes it give that liquid or gel-like appearance. Now, if it is this force field that's surrounding them, it must be strong enough to support a whole human's weight, pushing it quickly through space. I'm not really sure what kind of force field would do that. And you can see as they land here, they're all shivering and shaking. Now, this could just be nerves, or it could be that they're maybe a little bit cold. Space has extreme temperatures, and so this force field, or even if it's a material around them, must be able to kind of buffer between the thermal environment of space and their own temperature of their bodies. It must maintain about the same temperature as the environment on Earth. Otherwise, they would show up and be frozen, or they would show up and be melted or burned. But since they are shivering a little bit, I assume maybe it's not that thermally protective, because they could be cold from maybe space. So let's keep watching. So they still have the lights beneath their feet too. I wonder what that's about. Yeah, they're shivering. They look really cold and maybe a little out of breath, so maybe there was a little bit poor oxygen levels in that. This scene is really funny, but I'm going to stop it here. Okay, so this is the scene where the crew is finally in the cabin of the spaceship that they're about to fly, and now they're tasked with flying it into space for the first time.
Man, I ain't the commander.
Laredo, take us out.
Take us out.
Excuse me?
They designed those controls after watching you. Take her out.
Could you imagine that? So just based off of the show Galaxy Quest that the aliens found and downloaded and watched, they modeled this whole spaceship in order to fit according to what the characters of the show were doing. And so this person, Laredo, I think his name is being tasked with flying the ship even though he's never actually flown the ship. He's just faked it on the show. So now he's basically faking it till he makes it. Literally. This way that they're modeling the controls of the ship after the TV show controls reminds me of how NASA has developed drones. They didn't necessarily design them after, say, Top Gun and how the pilots flew the planes in Top Gun, but the way that drones are flown is actually modeled off of how pilots actually fly airplanes. The first drones, even though they're controlled with a joystick, didn't operate the same way that a plane is flown. For instance, if you turn a joystick on a plane, the plane will just start rotating to the right? But then with a drone, if you just rotate it, the wings would just go to that specific degree. That's originally how it was. But engineers, like my dad, this is why I know so much about this, were able to work with other engineers to program the drone flight so that the joystick behaved the same as actual planes. Okay, so this is one of my favorite scenes. Let's get back to it.
Right. Okay. Right.
They're all freaking out.
Take her out.
Like, does he even know which buttons to press? At least he knows how to turn it on. I would do the same. Oh. I wonder what those buttons do. It's cool they light up all blue. Very sleek. Hey, got it to move! Good job! Oh yeah, you look so confident. I would be like that too. I'd be like, oh yeah, look at this! Fake it till you make it. Uh-oh. Oh gosh. Yeah, the...
Okay, you gotta move to the right. More to the right.
Would you sit your ass down?
Now, I guess that's a case of mansplaining, right? He's telling him, okay, move to the right. It's like, I know.
Sit. Move. You want to drive this thing?
Oh, that sound. Now, if a spaceship were to scrape against the side of another bigger spaceship, would it make that high-pitched squeaking noise? I'm not too sure. I think it might. Like, I think of if you touch a car door and make that squeak. Because it's a larger surface, the sound that would be generated from that, right, which is a vibration against the actual car door material, since it's a larger area, the vibration would be like a larger surface involved, and so it's a deeper tone. You could think of this like if you're hitting a xylophone, the bigger the xylophone piece, the lower in pitch it's going to be, while the smaller it is, the higher it is. And this squeaking noise is a pretty high pitched, even though it's these huge pieces of metal rubbing up against each other. So if this actually were to happen, it would probably be a deeper tone. Also, notice how it's filming outside of the spaceships in space, and there's no sound in space. Sound is actually the fluctuating compression of air molecules, and in space there are no air molecules, and that's why there's no sound. Now let's wrap up this scene. That was like, woo, go like fingernails on a chalkboard. Oh my gosh, they made it! Another thing about the ship scraping up against the ship itself is, if you think about it, that's a lot of force pressing into the side of the ship. In fact, it really could have damaged the whole ship itself. I remember one time I was in this boat and I was approaching a dock. And as the boat was approaching, it was only going maybe 5 miles per hour, but still with the whole weight of the boat going at that amount of speed towards the dock, the amount of force required to keep the boat from hitting to the dock was actually a lot of force. This is because there's not much friction with the water itself. The same would be the case for this ship. You have a large amount of mass going into a certain direction. Now we know force equals mass times acceleration. So even if the ship was going at a very slow accelerated rate as it's speeding up and leaving this docking bay, the whole mass of that ship contributes to that force. And so that's a lot of force going into that ship. It could have broken everything. Can you imagine? All these lives are at stake in this moment. Anyway, I'm glad they made it out okay and can fly the ship for the rest of the mission.
Jason, can you hear me?
Yeah, glad
So now Jason's stuck on... So now Tim Allen's character Jason is stuck on the planet battling this pig lizard, as they'll call it.
Jason, we're gonna use the digital conveyor to get you out of there.
The digital conveyor?
Conveyor.
You mean I'm gonna be diced into cubes and sit up there in a million pieces? Right. Well, you know what?
Right.
I think I'll take my chance with Gorignac.
We're getting you out right now. It's perfectly safe, isn't it, Tim?
It has never been successfully tested.
What did he say?
Hold, please.
Theoretically, the mechanism is fully operational. However, it was built to accommodate your anatomy, not ours. But now that Tech Sergeant Chen is here, he can operate it. It was designed watching his motions from the historical documents.
I mean, I can't. I can supervise.
Jason, we're gonna test it.
I can supervise.
How about that pig lizard?
Hey, I'm doing all right with the pig lizard.
Please, Fred, and hurry.
I'm sorry. It's very exciting to watch the master at the controls. The operation of the conveyor is much more art than science.
Stand.
Did you hear that? He said the managing of the conveyor is much more art than science. I actually use that phrase a lot when I'm doing different forms of research. Sorry, I'm cracking up. This is hilarious. So for instance, a technique that I think is more art than science sometimes is electrochemical impedance spectroscopy. You really have to know your system in order to make conclusions about the data you have. Another technique I've used that can be more of an art than a science is X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy. This is because you have to do a lot of different peak analyses in order to deconvolute one peak from the next. I won't get into that here, but a lot of times scientists actually say, oh, it's more an art than a science. But it's just because sometimes data can be really hard to interpret. So it's hilarious that he said that just now.
Stand back, Jason.
That thing is ugly. Ew. Oh my gosh. Oh, did you see that? It was like beamed up with a lightning bolt. Did that come directly from the ship? And if it did, I wonder, it's some kind of burst of light, right? We saw the visible light in like a white, and so that's all the wavelengths of light, photons being emitted into our eyeballs from that moment. So this kind of beaming conveyor system must have to do with using light radiation, maybe? Oh, that's so gross! I forgot how gross this part is. Okay, well, bear through this with me.
What was that?
Nothing.
I heard some squealing or something.
Oh, no, everything's fine.
But the animal is inside out.
So the animal was beamed up, but it's inside out. Now let's kind of analyze this for a second. So we know this digital conveyor is intended to beam something up from a planet, so very far from the ship itself. and then it's beamed up using some kind of, we see this light radiation ejected like lightning bolts around the species itself, but it doesn't seem to damage the species, well, until it reaches the actual platform here on the ship. But what's amazing to me is that the creature is still completely intact when it's beamed onto the ship. Sure, it's inside out, but you can think of that as still being a major success. This means that all the atoms stay arranged in all the different cells and proteins and molecules and slime that make up this creature. The only thing that's different is somehow the animal is inside out, which I think what they mean by inside out is that the skin inside is exposed to the exterior. But it does seem like all the organs are intact. Like, could we be inside out from our stomachs? Where our stomach would like contain all of us? This is a really interesting thought experiment and kind of disgusting in my opinion. Now, there's also the question of how does it even get onto the ship? I'm thinking maybe the ship has some kind of detector on its exterior that this animal's particles or atoms can go through and appear inside of the ship. The atoms and cells and the organs that got beamed to the ship are likely the exact same atoms and organs and all that were on the planet. It's not like this created a new creature to mimic the old one. It literally transports it up and beams it up. If there's no detector or funnel or some kind of device that's receiving all the atoms and cells and all this from that creature, then the creature's materials, the atoms that make it up, have to pass through the ship itself, like the metal on the exterior and the interior. It has to come through all of that, right, to end up here. To do that, I would think the digital conveyor would have to break up the animal into its atoms, maybe to that level, so the atoms pass through the ship, or maybe even down to the subatomic particles, so the electrons, the protons, and neutrons of those atoms. Or even maybe a step further to the quarks, because quarks make up protons and neutrons. Or maybe even the electrons from the creature hit the ship, and then the ship's electrons get transferred into this new creature that's come here. Could electrons be interchangeable like that? I'm not a particle physicist, and so I don't really know how this particle rearrangement and arrangement would work in order to transport this creature, but, obviously we don't have this technology, so could it work? I don't know. Maybe I should ask my particle physicist friends.
Don't look down.
Commander, what I'd give to see what you're seeing.
Talking about?
You're deep in the underbelly of the Omega-13. Oh, it must be spectacular.
Well, it doesn't look like much to me. It's just these few walls and this drum spinning fan that we have in every single...
Brandon, what's the Omega-13 device do?
Many happen to believe that it is a matter collapser. Bomb capable of destroying pretty much everything in about 13 seconds. But myself and others are convinced that what it is a matter rearranger, affecting a 13-second time jump to the past.
Well, why 13 seconds? That's really not enough time to do anything of any importance.
Be time to redeem a single mistake.
What?
So this is the part of the movie where they come across the Omega-13, and this is in the core of the ship itself. As you heard them say, the Omega-13, nobody's quite sure what it does. Some people think it's a bomb or a weapon of mass destruction. Others think it can rewind everything time by 13 seconds. And that kind of makes sense because Omega-13, just the name of it, with Omega being the last letter of the Greek alphabet, and then 13, the number 13, you could think, okay, the last 13. The significance of it being 13 seconds, though, I'm not too sure about that. 13 is a prime number, but it's not super scientifically or mathematically significant, at least in what comes to my mind. I want to take a closer look of that structure of the Omega-13. So it's like these bluish, purplish, round orbs arranged in a different snake-like patterns and they're being lit up kind of like lightning, like you see the light brightness traveling through it. It reminds me of like an electrical current. Perhaps there's some kind of electromagnetic field that's suspending them in the air, or they're generating one. It's really hard to say what material it could be made out of. It does seem to be forming and arranging in itself, and this is a phenomenon we see in nature. Scientists have found, for example, that if you take a mammary gland and arrange the different cell structures in a certain order, it will actually start producing milk. It's like those cells and molecules know exactly what they're supposed to do and they function together accordingly. And this omega-13 structure seemed to be self-assembling and rearranging on its own. It's really quite beautiful and interesting. I wonder if something like that could exist in real life. Now, I'm going to give a total spoiler alert right now. It turns out, in fact, that the omega-13 is used to travel 13 seconds backwards in time. So I'm curious how this orb-like structure that lights up, maybe electromagnetic in a way, how that can actually change time of what seems to be the whole universe. Now, time is a mystery, and while I do have my bachelor's in physics, I'm not an expert on time itself. I do know that us humans perceive time to be proceeding linearly into the future. However, this is our own perception as humans and life forms in this universe, and time may actually not be as linear. For instance, they're going back in time. That seems to be such a common theme in sci-fi, going back in time, like in Back to the Future. But is time travel really possible? In a way, we are time traveling at every second, just going 1 second at a time forward. So they're re-entering through the Earth's atmosphere and they're coming back to Earth. It's real, right? Just plowing through all those cars. Wow, could you imagine like at a conference and something just crashes through and lands, like the spaceship that you love and know from your show? Surreal. I like how the whole movie where they're wearing the same spacesuits. And it's really just their costume from the beginning of the whole show. Of course, and she's like exposed. Typical. And then another crewmate. Well, I think I'll end it here. If you want to watch the rest of the show, like I said, I think it's available for free on YouTube with ads. And I hope you enjoyed this little reaction. Maybe you learned something new or saw something with a different perspective that you haven't seen before. If you have any thoughts about any of these scenes, again, feel free to comment in the section below. I'd love to hear what you think, especially maybe about the omega-13. Thanks for watching. Again, I'm Jill, and this is Across the Nanoverse. If you like this video and want to see more, like and subscribe to this video and turn on the notifications so that you get notified when I come out with new videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. I think I really want to do a part 2 to this because there's so many great scenes in this movie. I feel like I only just scratched the surface.